Hello and good morning from Toronto. My name is Catherine Cole and I'm the Executive Coordinator for the Unesco Chair in Reorienting Education Towards Sustainability at York University here in Toronto, Canada. And I'm also the Global Lead for the Sustainable Development Goal 4, SDG 4 on Quality Education in the Research Cluster hosted by the International Association of Universities based in Paris, France. It is my pleasure to be here today and share perspectives to spark the dialogue of the role and the potential contribution of STEM education during the decade of action towards the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. Let me share a couple of perspectives on the Sustainable Development Goals. This is not the first time that the United Nations is aiming at uniting the world, countries, governments, and societies in a pursuit of sustainability. Beginning with developing from a focus of environmental action during the early 70s Stockholm Summit, celebrating its 50th anniversary this week, towards the first definition ever in the Brundtland Report of Sustainable Development with its economic, environmental, and social dimensions, often added today by a cultural, a fourth dimension, towards the first climax of achieving a global United Nations action and implementation plan called the Agenda 21 in 1992, adopted at the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. So what Agenda 21 and the Sustainable Development Goals have in common is they're aiming towards a sustainable future. They are relevant for all member states of the UN, and they put education at the center and as a vital means of implementation. In 1992, the term education for sustainable development came up during, or the concept came up. The term was developed a little bit later, but the concept came up in chapter 36 and the Agenda 21. And the fourth thrust of ESD, which is the acronym for Education for Sustainable Development, they are still valid today. And they are access and retention in quality education, reorienting education systems towards sustainability, more than teaching about, but including sustainability in all aspects of education systems, public awareness and understanding, because only an educated and understanding public will be able to perceive and comprehend and also support any actions towards sustainability, and including sustainability in training in all sectors, including technical and vocational training, including it in business and industry and all aspects of non-formal education. So those four thrusts of ESD, those are still the ones that are valid today. And like in 1992, again for 2015, when the SDGs were developed, education was extremely important and even pre-negotiated in order to make sure that education was, they got it right and included ESD in the 10 targets of the SDG 4, and while ESD, Education for Sustainable Development, is found in SDG 4.7, in target 7 out of 10, it was elevated by the United Nations General Assembly to being a key enabler of all of the other SDGs. So it's not only relevant for achieving a quality education, but it is relevant to address all the other most pressing issues, the world's most pressing issues that are determined in the SDGs. And I would like to say that those 17 are just the result of country negotiations. This is not the final catalog of global challenges that we have. This is just what was possible and everyone could agree upon. Often discuss the missing pillar of sustainable development: culture, the arts, spirituality. All these aspects are not yet found in the SDGs. But in looking at the SDGs from a regional, but also from an academic disciplinary perspective, whatever academic or rather academic background everyone brings to the discussion, those SDGs can be localized. What does a global goal of no poverty, no hunger, gender equality, etc., sustainable city, what does it really mean in my region, my country, my local setting, my technical expertise? What does it really mean, and where can I contribute in order to make sense within the global framework? That is the question that we're addressing here, and that's what I feel is everyone's responsibility, of looking at what can I in particular contribute in my setting and with what I can bring to the discussion. And there is a strong role for STEM education in bringing values into ethical science, the way we do science, the way we conduct science, what we research, what we prioritize, how we humanize technology, how we humanize our environments as they are moving on, how we comprehend, for example, large numbers and very small numbers of 1 degree global warming having tremendous impact on humanity. There is a lot of importance for STEM to take a role and to contribute to the discussion. And I hope this workshop will support the presence of STEM in the discussion, and each and every sustainable development goal gives an opportunity. I would just like to, in order to give food for thoughts for the days to come, walk through 5 documents that I consider relevant for the discussion, as they're recent UNESCO documents in a framework of the SDGs. The first one, UNESCO's Futures of Education, looking at 2050, beyond 2030. What is the philosophical basis of our education? What is needed? And it's said an education as a social contract, as a common good of societies and educating people. So the underlying of education, building on what do we need to know, what do we need to do, what do we need to be, or who do we need to be, and how do we live together, and how do we become lifelong learning, how do we include lifelong learning in our societies? This is like the philosophical background with a quest for research in the discussion and in the document. So there is a place to contribute, as UNESCO keeps asking about contributions of research to gain better understanding of what we think we know today, but what needs to be improved. And the report is asking 2 fundamental questions. What do we need to abandon, and what could we keep going? And adding a 3rd dimension, where could we creatively think about new ways? So that's an important underlying philosophical document to take into consideration. Particularly on higher education, there is the UNESCO Roadmap, just published last week, coming into play, with suggesting areas of transformation. And I would just like to point out again, it's going beyond 2030, and it's bringing 2 aspects that I would like to bring here amongst the 6 areas of transformation. It's a holistic student learning experience, not only with regard to content, but with regard to the entire experience and the learning practice and the role of students, not only at the university, but within the community, and the support for creating not only the access, but creating diverse and flexible program diversity and flexible pathways for learning, to allow everyone to participate in higher education, as still only a very small percentage gets to go, of the world's population gets to go to higher education, but they make up the majority of the world's leaders in governments, business, industry, the culture, the arts. So there's a high responsibility for higher education to position sustainable development in their graduates and in their operations, to model sustainability as they have high influence on future decision makers. The next one, published during the Barcelona conference and launched during the Barcelona conference, even states sustainability as a core practice and purpose of higher education, going way further, and we're extremely happy about that. And also addressing the second aspect, amongst others that I want to point out here, addressing the ways of knowing. What do we know? What do we consider good knowledge? How do we get to this knowledge? who gets to contribute his knowledge, where are universities enablers, where are they through their academic publishing system, where are they gatekeepers and keeping people from contributing to the discussions. Those kind of questions are to be asked, and also to look into our own higher education principles and values, again promoting lifelong learning and flexible pathways. The other document equally launched in Barcelona. So we have the roadmap and 2 reports launched just last week for higher education. Again, GUNI, a global network, a global university network for innovation, suggests 7 areas of transformation. And here I just want to point out the humanist values and the partnership. Humanist values, humanistic education is not secular, it includes religious perspectives. So bringing back to the original or the traditional humanistic values is in consideration from GUNI, which is a rather European network, and also walking away from the competition towards collaboration and partnership, especially between the global north and the global south. More aspects in the report. I will share a resource list if you wish to include this report in the discussion. Overall, as I'm going very, very quickly, I want to mention only the 5th document. It is ESD for 2030, because at the core of all of these reports and the core of the SDGs still lies the education for sustainable development. And there's a particular UNESCO roadmap where you can learn more about the ESD as an education principle and its role within the SDGs. And it defines ESD as a really holistic learning approach with empowerment for learners to not only understand and to comprehend, but to take the action, to develop the compassion, to do something about the things that matter to them. And here again, the importance of higher education for their graduates, but also for their entire community. The SDGs do not only call for access to higher education, they also call for research. So do all of these documents have research requests in them? So I invite you to consider those global requests for research to contribute, as there is a role for STEM in them. And also, whereas UNESCO and engineering mostly focuses on gender equality and access for girls and women to engineering, also mathematics, etc., but rather a gender focus. There is a broad role for STEM in all of the SDGs to contribute to all of these quests for research, and I invite you to discuss the opportunities and build on our higher education values of knowledge transfer, internationalization, collaboration, working together to make this world a better one. And I wish you well for the days to come. And I'm excited actually to hear about the outcomes of this workshop, and I'm looking forward to hearing all about it. Thank you very much. All the best from Toronto.